And it's been a while since we read something together.
It has been ages.
And my husband always asks, "What about that really nice British lady? Are you reading with her?" So here you are, that really nice British lady.
Oh, thanks. I'm sure my kids wouldn't agree, but
um, so this month we read Lady Killers, Deadly Women Throughout History by Tori Telfer. And we had a great time reading this book, discussing it. It's obviously the name kind of says it all. It's about serial killers, female serial killers throughout history. And what were your thoughts about the book? Just general kind of overall impressions of it. If you give it a star rating, what would you give it?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed some parts more than others, I would say. I really enjoyed the fact that we covered a wide range of history and a wide range of geography, because I think that was really interesting. I I did think there were quite a lot of poisonings.
Yes.
So all of the poisoning stories are like merged into one in my mind now.
Yes.
But I thought it was really an interesting premise to sort of turn the sort of Jack the Ripper narrative on its head a little bit, because certainly male serial killers do get glorified quite a lot, I think, in literature, in fiction, and in non-fiction. And I think, with the exception of one, I hadn't heard of any of these. So
Nice.
they were all new to me. So I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was good. This time last year, obviously, we read The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, which I gave a 4 star. So I don't think it was quite up to the same level, but I did enjoy sections of it.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Yeah, I was trying to think. I'm glad you said that because I was trying to remember what the last book was that we read together. So, yeah, and the five was tremendous. I do feel like the five, you know, it really puts you in that time and place, and it gave me a lot of perspective on the um, the era and how that impacted the crimes. This book, this book doesn't really have the opportunity to do that because it is, so many short little vignettes about different serial killers, so you never quite get any sort of depth to the accounts, which I think is probably what, we both kind of picked up on. But I will say that it's pretty fast paced. I mean, you've got those little short, blurbs, and so it was easy to read, and I could definitely see someone who is not a nonfiction reader
Yes.
liking this book.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
conversational in tone, I thought. So I thought that was quite good.
yeah, for sure. Um, And actually, I'm going to click on Kevin's comment because he's also in the book club. And he says, "I like how she discussed poisoning is not a cowardly act. You have to take care of the person you're poisoning and watch them die slowly." Yeah, that was a really good point. And, I do think there's a lot of emphasis on when women are murderers that they do take kind of a more hands-off approach through
Yeah.
poisoning. I think, that is how it's portrayed typically. And I never really thought about this until reading this book. But yeah, poisoning someone, it's a long, drawn out, painful, brutal process. And you have to be a certain kind of sick and twisted to sit back and watch that.
Yeah, I guess though, in another way, you almost don't have to take responsibility for it. The person that you're murdering potentially doesn't know you're murdering them, and it's a little bit easier to cover up than if there's a bloody knife to hide. So I think that's where the cowardly bit has come from historically in the media. The fact that the women never really have to take accountability with the victim of what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
That's true. Although there were a couple of accounts, and we talked before we went live, that it's kind of hard to remember who's who at this point. But there were a couple of accounts where the victims did seem to recognize what was happening.
Yeah.
And some of them, of course.
I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Amber, darling, I'm alive.
Gemma, go.
I'm so sorry. I'll be
go. Kevin and I can chat for a bit. Yeah, there were a couple of accounts in here where the victims were keen to what was happening, and that was kind of wild to think about. I do think this book dispels a lot of the misconceptions about women and crime. I think that even today there is a good bit of leniency afforded to women, and yeah, I think this book kind of flies in the face of that. While Gemma's away, I was going to ask Kevin if there was a particular case or serial killer that impacted you or that you found the most interesting. And Kevin says, well, one husband in Kansas thought the woman had poisoned her grandson and told his brother he was worried about being poisoned himself. Yeah, that's right. I think we had the discussion in the group about why this man did, if he thought she poisoned a child, why would you not act?
Yeah.
I mean,
but does that not smell of that he didn't really think that until afterwards?
Yeah, well, and too, some of the information we're getting, because the author does focus on more historical accounts, she doesn't really go into contemporary accounts. We are getting, a lot of this information is second, third hand. I mean, it's, so this of course may be something someone said after the fact. Oh yeah, I remember old Tom. He was worried about that,
Yeah.
The woman in Kansas, Dottie, I thought it was interesting how she acted so grandmotherly while poisoning all her family. Yeah, that, here's my thing, and I think I said it in the group. It's everyone gets old, and just because you get old and your body breaks down and you look feeble, and, of course, our inclination is to protect the elderly and, help them and that sort of thing, that doesn't absolve them of responsibility for anything that they've done. So when I see these criminals who in recent years have been caught through DNA and all sorts of, online sleuthing, and they come, teetering into the courtroom, with the walker or in the wheelchair, I really, I don't have any sympathy for it. That affects me not at all. Just because you're old, that does not absolve you of anything. But it's a great tactic. There were those tactics used in this book, and not necessarily the elderly, bit, but just the innocent, motherly, female, personas that were adopted. What did you think about that, I guess, about the whole, all of the misconceptions, I guess, that this book addresses as far as female serial killers?
I think it's interesting, and I think it's a good thing to talk about and to sort of document the fact that it's not, I think people do have an image in their mind of what a serial killer looks like, which really, when you think about it logically, is ridiculous, right? But I think we all do have that preconception. Oh, it's going to be like a loner who's like ugly and angry at the world and whatever. And what the author did well was say, actually, no,
Yeah.
that's not it at all. Actually, quite a lot of these women were beautiful. Quite a few of them were very affluent as well. So it wasn't about money, really, though some of them got more money through their actions. And like you say, like the sweet old grandma that you just want to like give a hug to, and it's very juxtaposed with sort of your image of society and what what those people are like. So I think that was a really nice addition by Tori. Is it Telfer?
Telfer. I want to say Teflon. Telfer.
I keep saying Tefla, and now I've like mixed up so many times in my mind. I don't know which one's right. So I think that was really good of her to sort of intersperse it. But there were characters in there that had some of those sort of stereotypical traits as well. So I think that she did a good job of balance, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what did you think about the role of sexuality in all of this? Because it did seem to me, and I mean, she did point out, but like how these women were discussed. There's one scene that sticks out in my mind where she's talking about one of the serial killers who ends up being captured or gunned down. She's apprehended, and I can't remember if she's killed or not, but whatever the scenario was, there were multiple accounts of what happened, and it was almost like a weird sexual fascination with how he was captured and like describing her, and very odd.
So is that the one that no one actually knows if she was caught or not? Is it that one?
I think so, yeah. I think that's why it's so kind of like muddled in my mind as to what happened.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think there is an element of that. And I think actually the case that came to mind when you started discussing this was actually the Chicago one, with the woman who killed her husband. And it was around the time that the sort of Roxy Hart and Velma, I don't know, the Chicago girls from the musical.
Yeah.
It was around that time, and she was saying that a lot of women got away with it because of how beautiful they looked, and you know, they put on the sob story to the jury, and it was all like very glamorous Chicago. But if you weren't beautiful and you didn't have all of that, you went to jail.
Yeah.
This is like, what? So there is, and I think still now exists in society, this leniency towards people who are aesthetically beautiful, which is really interesting, and possibly why there aren't more records of female serial killers, because they just got away with it because they were pretty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kevin's right. It was the daughter of the couple running the inn and killing the guest.
Yeah.
Mark, good to see you, buddy.
Hi, Mark.
And I guess my next question is, I mean, this is an odd way to put it, but no offense or weirdness, hopefully interpreted through this, but what was your favorite?
No, I completely know what you mean. And my favorite was, it's between two. The Hungarian baroness, the Elizabeth Bathory, the very first one.
Yes.
The one that killed all of her servants, basically.
Yes.
Of them, just for kicks. And I think that's really interesting because obviously this was the one I had heard of before, and there is a lot of dramatization around her in fiction, particularly around her bathing in the blood of virgins and all this sort of gubbins. So I thought it was interesting to have that with just sort of the facts presented to us, like these things probably didn't happen and these things possibly did happen. But I mean, she was pretty monstrous.
Yeah, the thing about that was, and I'm like you, of course, I'd heard the stories, and you know, the stories are, I don't want to say cool, but you know what I mean. They're fascinating. But the truth is even more, I think, crazy than the stories they made up about her, because you know, I just thought, I'm like, it can't get any worse, and I'm like, well, dag nappit, it did. Like it got worse, and you know, it was absolutely brutal. I mean, just the sheer amount, just the volume. The volume was beyond anything I could imagine of how many people she killed and tortured. And the fact that her husband was also into this, you know,
Yeah.
before he died, they were like the, you know, torture power couple, I suppose.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, that's always really eerie to think about, that there are that many people that are so disturbed and evil that they can actually find each other and then go on, you know, perpetrating even worse deeds than maybe they would alone. They kind of feed off of each other. But I guess my question with that is, how much do you think power comes into play with some of the people that we read about?
I think it comes into play with all of them. I think all of them are looking for power of some description, some more than others. And almost the ones that already have a decent level of power are the ones that tend to be more prolific, because that's where they've already got power from money and estate and social class. So their only like joy in life is like killing these people, right? So they just kill loads. I mean, with the Baroness, she basically only got caught because she ran out of poor people to kill, right? So she she started up a school for girls or whatever it was, and that's the point where that one? Who was that
Yes,
one?
I think you're right. Yeah.
And similarly with the Russian one, whose name you said before we came on this live, and now I've forgotten what it was.
Daria.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
she was similar, wasn't she? She had a lot of money and influence, and it was only really when she had stacked up quite a lot of poor bodies that people started taking any notice. And actually, if Catherine the Great hadn't come in, she probably would have just carried on, right?
Yeah. I think you're right. Kevin said, I thought many might not have been killers in our modern age because they would have had opportunities to live their own lives and make their own money. You know, that is one of the things that played a big part with some of the cases. One that sticks out to me is I don't even know how to pronounce her name, but she was the Moroccan dancing girl who
Yes.
ends up becoming a madam. I do feel like in her case, and maybe a couple others, they were abused as children, physically, sexually, all of that, and they were very limited in how they could survive. And I think that contributed to what they became. Obviously, I'm not saying that everyone who is poor and abused is going to turn out to be a serial killer. So I'm not, you know, excusing what they did, but I do think it played a part.
But I think we look for that in serial killers. Do you know what I mean? So
We
when
do.
we find out that someone,
Why?
oh well, they probably had a rough childhood, or
Yeah,
you know, they were abused, or they've had a huge trauma. But actually, quite a lot of these women didn't seem to have that. They
that's
they
true.
just they wanted more than they had, whether that's power, money, sort of whatever, a new husband or whatever it was.
Yeah,
A lot of them, I mean, we don't know because they didn't go into enough detail, so they might have been
right.
traumatic things, but on the surface of it, it didn't look like they were all driven from that place, which is actually scarier, I think, because you look for a reason, don't you? A reason for them to commit these crimes. And if it is just because they wanted a new husband, that's not a great reason.
We're trying to find logic in an illogical situation.
Yes.
You know, we're logical people, so we're applying our sensibilities to this situation. Like, you know, and really, you know, I think the madam, and I think it was Daria maybe, that was, I think it was pretty clear she was abused, like by cousins or siblings or something. There was something, it may not have been her, but it was one.
Oh,
and I'm like,
no, the French one at the
was
end.
it the French one? Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Queen of Poisoners, Marie.
Queen of Poisoners, there you go. Yeah, that, and they just kind of glossed over that. It was just like, oh yeah, she admitted that she, you know, had been with her cousins and her brother at the age of, like, I forget what, but it was
something ridiculous,
something ridiculously young, like just crazy. And the madam, the one that really just threw me for a loop was the situation with the kids in the wall.
Yeah.
Ugh. I mean, she basically had these kids stuck in the wall.
That was never really explained. Why did she put live kids in the wall?
And luckily the police heard them, like, but she's like, oh, it's just some rats in the wall or something. No big deal. It's like they're screaming for help. That was just, yeah, I kept thinking, oh gosh, this one's the worst one. This one's the worst one. This one's the worst one. You know?
Yeah.
Just kept getting worse. What a cheery topic on this wonderful Sunday morning.
At least it's sunny outside to offset with the gloom.
It is sunny here too, so we're good. We'll go soak up some vitamin D after this and make sure we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that drives our fascination with true crime, and, you know, definitely a lot of people are into it. I mean, you can't turn on the TV without seeing true crime shows. There's a ton of true crime podcasts. There's obviously books. And I think it is our attempt to find an explanation.
Yeah. But I think sometimes there just isn't one.
There isn't. There really isn't. I mean, sometimes the evil is just evil.
Yeah.
And it's hard I guess it's hard for us to sleep at night with that answer, because it's really scary.
Yeah, because it could be anyone, right?
It literally could be anyone. I mean, ugh. I did notice though, and I've noticed this in other books that I've read, with murderers. There were quite a few that had either, it was unclear, but they may have suffered from some sort of neurological event. Like, I think one or two was like they had seizures or something, and then one, there were maybe migraines or something involved, and that fascinates me. I think, one, because I'm trying to find a reason, but two, I do think that they need to do a lot more research on that. Like, I do think people's brains, something is wrong there.
Yeah.
Like, something is absolutely wrong, because if they're normal and okay, we've got a serious problem. You know?
Yeah. I would agree. I think that the neurochemistry angle is super interesting, and but it's also more terrifying at the same time, because it's like, what is to stop like some sort of imbalance in our own brains one day, and then we just like knock our husbands off, right? Or you know, I am tempted sometimes, but I resist. But yeah, like how easy is that to happen, and how easy is it to reverse it?
Yeah.
No one really knows, do they?
They don't. Pauline, hey, good to see you here. Was that Wicked Boy? Yeah, I think that may have been the Wicked Boy. And I'm trying to think of the full name of that book. Let me look it up here. Mystery of a Victorian Child Murderer. And yeah, he had headaches, these horrible headaches. And I remember in the book club we were talking about that because several of us in the club have migraines. So of course we were very interested in this whole case. It was Robert Combs and his brother Natty, and he was 13, his little brother was 12. But yeah, Kevin says, when I'm suffering with a migraine headache, I am more prone to anger. So maybe it is just taken to extremes in some people.
Mm-hmm.
That is, yeah, migraines do make me very, I mean, just off, for lack of a better word, but like weirdly emotional. And I'm not really an emotional person. Like, I'm pretty just like stable. Like, I don't want to say flatline because I'm not dead, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not prone to big variations in my emotional state. But a migraine can do that. And, you know, it's something going on in your brain, you know? So yeah, that's.
So you can imagine if you are quite an emotional person and then you have something like that on top of it, it could be enough to tip you over the edge.
It could be. The story of, do you know how to pronounce that?
Nope.
Gillet de Raz would be up your alley. French hero of the 100 Years' War, best buddy of Joan of Arc.
Ooh.
And his darker side, a serial killer of children.
Oh, adding to TBR.
Yes. Well, funny enough, Joan of Arc is the patron saint of my alma mater. And we have a couple statues of her there. So, I don't know, just kind of a weird connection. Mark waving to mom. Love it. Yeah, that of course I'd started out marking every spot where someone had like a headache or they said their head hurt. And then I was like, why am I doing that? I'm trying to justify these horrible serial killers' behavior. Let me just stop that right now. What did you make of the author's decision to only focus on historical accounts and not cover any contemporary cases?
Well, I think it was quite a political decision.
Yeah.
And I can understand why she would make that decision, especially because I think was that her debut? I don't think she's a super prolific author, is she? I don't know. I might just be making that up.
It is her first book, yes. She's worked as a children's magazine editor, an academic proofreader, a corporate semi-ghostwriter, a creative writing instructor, and a copywriter.
Okay, she has one other book out. So I wonder if, because it was her first book, she didn't want to rock the boat with loads of negative trolls, for lack of a better word, because you know what it's like, especially when you talk about people like Myra Hindley, for example. There's a lot of opinion around her, and a lot of anger still towards her, and it just takes a bit of the emotion out of it, I suppose, by just doing historical women. So I actually think the more historical, the more interesting. But I think that's more because I'm not much of a true crime reader, so I'm more interested in like how history works and how like the society of that time played a part. That interests me, whereas like whether they went to Tesco's or Asda, which probably you don't have either of those in the States, so that's a really bad example.
Yeah, I'm like, what are we talking about
tea
here?
or coffee is like not like,
okay.
I don't care. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't care about the modern stuff, but that's just me as a reader. I don't know what you thought, Carrie.
I thought it was brilliant because, I'm someone who is into true crime. However, I do have reservations about how some productions are done. Um, I don't Target or Walmart. Thank you, Mark. um, I do. I'm a bit more sensitive to the fact that these are people who had families,
Yeah.
and how the subject matter is treated is distasteful many times. It's disrespectful. It's you know and I mean, I guess I'm guilty of it too because I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
So, there is a morbid fascination, but I guess at least I have the good sense to feel guilty about that. You know what I mean? And I feel like for some people, it's just something else to talk about, you know.
Yeah.
I've listened to some true crime podcasts where there is like an investigative angle to it. Like they're trying to get justice for a family. Like there is an end goal. It's not just the salacious details and the hot actors on TV playing the
Yeah.
parts. And, there's this tendency to always think of the interesting cases as, oh, this couple, they were the happiest couple and they were, both just gorgeous, and they had, they focus on a lot of those external things that have absolutely nothing to do with the case. Like you said, like they're focusing on these little details that are just I don't even know what you would call them, but they're not central to anything. I mean, if you're wanting to know like what happened and did we get justice? Did we not get justice? What, how was the case investigated? I don't need to know that this person was the high school homecoming queen and cheated on her boyfriend with, if that has nothing to do, I don't know. It
Yeah.
just feels like we go through these um shows and they just start excavating this person's life, and it's just like, is that necessary? I mean, it's all for entertainment,
Yeah.
so it's, yeah, I do have reservations about a lot. I don't really watch any true crime shows anymore because of how they handle the subject matter. I still watch the old Forensic Files because it's more like how they solve the case, and they talk to the actual detectives, and they don't really, it's 30 minutes, so they don't go into like this person's grades in high school or what,
Mm.
weird strange details that have no bearing on the case. um so I don't really watch those anymore, so I kind of liked this. It was interesting. It was um you didn't have to worry about family members. With contemporary cases, I wouldn't want to touch that. I mean, I wouldn't want to write about that.
Nope. No. I mean, like, I'm obviously different to you, my reading taste, but I wouldn't want to read about a contemporary serial killer
Yeah.
knowing that my family is still here to be murdered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would feel that would like put me on edge, knowing that that happened like in the village up the road, and do you know what I mean? I just don't want to. I just don't want to even think about it.
Yeah.
Just ignorance is bliss.
Um, Mark said Myra Henley Rose West. Horrible. That was that a husband wife team?
I can't remember, but she was the one that killed all the kids, wasn't she?
Mark, you need to jump in and give us a little backstory on that.
Yeah,
I can
rape and
only
murder of 5 small children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aileen Wuornos. Yeah. Of course, I think everyone remembers that one. But at least she killed adults, which for me is easier. Yeah. I don't think yeah, anytime in the book where kids were a part of it, it's too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Agree.
life is life, but that's just I mean, I can't even talk about it. It's just oh, okay. Yeah. So again, here we go, like with what I was talking about before, just the idea that there are enough of these people that they can pair up, find each other, and perpetrate these horrific things. It's just unreal.
It makes you wonder though, if they hadn't met, who was the driver? Because one of them would have been the driver, right?
True.
So if they hadn't met each other, would it still have happened?
Yeah, because how does that even come up? You know?
Yeah.
A lazy dinner on a Sunday, and you're like, hey, have you ever thought about murder? You know? Yeah, it's hard to understand. Thankfully.
Yes, indeed.
Thankfully. All right. Well, I don't have anything else really. I didn't come prepared with any questions. So I'm gonna open it up to Mark and Kevin and Pauline. If you guys have any questions about the book or any comments about the book, if you want to shoot them in the chat and we will discuss. Mark went to school with a murderess, and I thought she was a nice girl. What a good judge of character I am. Oh, Pauline, that says nothing about you. It says everything about her, but nothing about you. You're just a wonderful, trusting person who, unfortunately, well, I'm glad Mark survived that. I'm glad he didn't run in her circle.
Yeah. That's scary.
What did you think of several of the women teaming up with others? The stereotypical male killer is a loner, but women seem more to involve more others in their killing. I think that speaks to women in general. I do think that we are more social. I can just speak to like what I notice, like just between my husband and I. Like I have several circles of girlfriends, and we do things regularly. We're just I don't know. I think it's easier, I guess, for women to be social in that way. I think for adult men, it's a little bit different. It's just been my experience. I don't know.
I think some of it's society as well. I think women are raised to think about almost safety in numbers, right? You don't go out on your own. You don't walk home alone. You don't, I mean, we've probably all done that, but
yeah,
but we're raised to think you don't do things like scary things on your own. So maybe that's just a byproduct of the world we live in and the society we're raised in.
That's true. I didn't think about that. I think it is easier for the men to kill kids if they have a woman with them, as it seems safer, doesn't it? People don't like to think of women as being killers. That's true. Yeah. I think for some male killers, the female sidekick is just their modus operandi. Like that's just their way to get it done, to, attract and make people feel safe.
Yeah. And I think also this is quite a disturbing thought, but if we go back to like the power thing about a murderer trying to take power back, men can quite easily take power over a woman, so he can kill her, and that's quite an easy thing for him to do, to feel powerful. But a woman can't do the same to a man, in theory, not always, but you know what,
right?
But they can do that to a child, right? So that's a disgusting thought, but it
Yeah.
just that if you're looking at it from a power perspective, I feel dirty even having thought that. I feel like I need to go and have a shower.
So actually, one of the things I did write down before we came on was the Lizzie Halliday case. The one thing that stood out about that case was the fact that one of her victims, her husband, when they found his body, he had multiple bullet wounds, but he also suffered blunt force trauma, and it was so severe that his left eye was knocked out of the socket. So, and I think that for the author and for us reading it was quite shocking too, because like you said, like the idea of a woman like overpowering a man is pretty unusual. Um, and so I did like that she put a couple more hands on, for lack of a better word, um, killings perpetrated by women in there, because again, you can't have this idea that women aren't capable of that and would never do that, and they're just poisoners, and because there's always an exception to any rule. And yeah, that was pretty wild. Mark, I was at school with Britain's youngest female killer.
Wow, claim to fame, Mark.
You're brushed with a murderess. The people want to know. She was okay, very friendly girl. The scary thing is when I knew her, she had already committed the murder. It just wasn't discovered. Mark,
So dramatic.
wow. Whoa. That is, of course, now I have to look up this person because I need to see.
What is this person's name? Sharon Carr.
Sharon Carr. I need a picture. And here I am, just like the other people. I'm like, I need a picture. See what she looks like. Wow. Unreal.
Whoa. That is crazy. Also known as the Devil's Daughter, apparently. So, wow. Why? What were her parents like?
I have lived a colorful life. School with England's greatest rugby player, and before that, with England's youngest female killer.
Age 12. Woo.
Oh my gosh. And Pauline, she's also known a victim, Brenda Nash. Pauline, Mark, I think you too need to write a book, because didn't you also live near an asylum? and you could hear the sirens when there was an escaped inmate. I mean, I'm pretty sure I remember that. Unreal.
That is mad.
Yes, they lived near Broadmoor. Yeah. I forget what we were reading, and that came up.
Broadmoor, where is that? Sorry. Is it sorry? Broadmoor.
Book Zealots, hey, good to see you. The psychology of the why interests me as to why so many of these people go off the deep end and take a life. One man said he felt a shift that was sort of an out-of-body experience. No why. Yeah. That's what we've been talking about this whole time, basically trying to figure out this why, and sometimes there just is no why. It's just evil. Yeah, Wicked Boy. Yeah, Broadmoor was in Wicked Boy.
Well, I'm impressed with my geography. I'm usually not that good.
Nice. Yeah, so one of the things that I really liked at the end of the book, the author included a quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I don't know if anyone's ever read the Gulag Archipelago. I've read the first part. It's 3 parts, and each one is like 1,000 pages. So only read the first one.
Yeah, I
there
do
was
own it. I
only
haven't attempted it yet.
there was only so much Soviet death and torture that I could take. You know what I mean? I'm into the dark stuff, but I guess I'd hit my limit with the part one, so I couldn't suffer through the gulag anymore. But phenomenal work. Just unbelievable that someone could survive all of that. And so, a lot of what he talked about was trying to figure out why something like this could happen, how something like this could happen. And the quote that she included at the end was, if there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it was necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Pretty deep. Pretty deep.
Yeah.
I think, that is the scary thing.
Yeah.
Is that these are people, and I think circumstances and brain chemistry and all sorts of factors sometimes create the perfect storm for, this sort of thing to happen.
Yeah.
The Long Walk.
Books.
So many books. Yeah, maybe start with this one, Gemma, instead of the Gulag Archipelago. That one. I'm not saying it wasn't good. It was great. But it was a behemoth. It was really, really long.
So yeah, I have it on ebook, so I don't feel like it's that long when I like flip past the cover of it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it was a doorstop. It was like about this thick. The one I had.
Yeah. Not sure I'll ever have time for that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, Gemma, is there anything else that you wanted to throw out there about Lady Killers?
No, I really enjoyed reading it with everyone. I did want to just apologise because I wasn't super active on the chat. Just September was a disaster of a month for me. But I really enjoyed the book. It's definitely out of my wheelhouse. So that was one of the reasons I was quite excited to get to it, because it's nothing that I would pick up of my own accord, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much for having me host again, Carrie. It was lovely. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to read with you, my sweet English booktube friend. That sweet English lady. I think he just likes the accent. But yeah, so yeah, always a good time, and thanks for joining. And yeah, no worries. And that book club is very low key, and participate as much or as little as you want. We've got a lot of busy folks in the group, so completely understand that. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks for everybody for tuning in and contributing to the discussion.